Good evening, everybody. Joe Pal Martin, the Metalhead here. Hope you're going well. Happy New Year. Yes, it's the first day of 2026. So as my mum would always say on New Year's Day, 365 days, 365 more opportunities. Hoping for a lot of big things in 2026. Maybe I'll go back to Australia. Maybe I'll get to another 10 countries. Who knows? But I got a really nice surprise this morning when I came home from work. It's kind of like a New Year's Day gift, I guess. But actually, I just bought this to give to a friend of mine in about a few weeks' time when I go up and visit her. It's an album that I actually owned when I was 24, and it's quite close to my heart because on the night I was losing my V-plate to the lady called Caroline, I was thinking of the title track song. That is Olivia Newton-John's 1985 record, Soul Kiss. It came out in October that year, actually a month before I was born. And it didn't really fare well compared to the Grease and Xanadu soundtracks or her previous studio records, Are Totally Hot and Physical. I mean, both of those albums sold more, but this one basically just went gold. It was at a time when Olivia had just gotten married. She was pregnant at the time with the birth of Chloe the following year. And this album wasn't really heavily promoted, but she did make 5 different music videos for this record. And also, so it's a gatefold. As this is back in the day, really old classic. The same style as what you get on the physical record, it's basically like the gatefold, something like that. She was clearly pregnant at the time, but you can't really see much of the pregnancies when she was making these videos and all. But the funny thing was, like, the pull-out thing, like, it advertised other records with the company. This is printed actually on Mercury. I used to think that O&J and Crimson Glory were actually on the same record label, but this promo actually promotes a few metal albums. Like, look at this, like TNT, which is from Norway. The lead singer actually used to sing with Taylor Dane once. Then there's also Dio, Lita Ford, In Excess. Pretty just an interesting thing. So, I'm going to go blow by blow about the songs on the albums and who they're written by. Okay, so on side 1, starts off with Toughen Up. The music video actually portrayed women who are really fed up with their useless husbands and how this magical woman ended up, getting rid of the husbands or getting them involved and all. And Olivia actually played 2 characters, the mistress, lady judge, the woman, and the schoolgirl. Toughen Up was written by Terry Britton and Graham Lyle. Terry Britton, famous guy, I believe he wrote What's Love Got to Do with It for Tina Turner around the same time. And playing on that that song was the late Carlos Vega on drums, Abraham Laborian on bass, who is a Garifuna born in Mexico with Honduran parents, Marcus Ryle on synthesizers, Ritenour doing the guitar solo, Paulina Den Costa on percussion, John Farrar playing guitar and background vocals, and Olivia on background vocals. The thing was, I think only Soul Kiss was actually released as a single. Now, the title track Soul Kiss was written by Mark Goldberg. It had the one and only Vinnie Colaiuta, C-A-L-I-A, Colaiuta. Yes, Vinnie Colaiuta, and the funny connection was he would end up playing on a Megadeth album, The System Has Failed. I just couldn't believe that Vinnie Colaiuta played on an Olivia Newton-John record, but he also went on to create a full record with Megadeth. There's also Greg Phillinganes on synthesizers. I got to see Greg last year in Toto, because he joined Toto around 2007, basically just as a fill-in, like a keyboardist. But Greg has played on so many different records, like even Eric Clapton. Then there's Mark Goldberg, the songwriter, also on synthesizer, Mike Fisher on percussion, Larry Carlton on guitar fills, Katie Sagal, familiar with Children and Futurama, on background vocals, John Farrar on guitar and synclav, and Owen J on background vocals. The title track, Soul Kiss, was her last top 40 hit. Now we talk about the third track, Queen of the Publication, was written by John Farrar, Tom Snows, and Steve Kipner. on the record was Carlos Vega, Mike Fisher, doing the typewriter, Steve Lukather. Yeah, Steve Lukather, that was his third Olivia album. Maybe if you, I think, not sure if he was involved in Grease, but yes, Steve Lukather was on Physical, Totally Hot and Soul Kiss. Marcus Ryle on synthesizer, John Farrar on guitar, and Sinclair Lee Ritenour on guitar. So it's like a double whammy of Lee and Steve playing guitar on this one track. Emotional Tangle, which is like a really ballad one, which was written by Australia's own Billy Thorpe, rest in peace, who actually was playing synthesizer on this track, along with Nathan East, Paulina DaCosta, Carlos Vegas, Marcus Ryle, John Farrar doing all the extra work, Jeremy Lubbock doing the string arrangements, Greg Vinci, concert master, and Olivia background vocals. Now, another song I like on this album is Culture Shock, which is written about a love triangle. But the funny thing was the music video had the guy from Kiss. But before he was in Kiss, Mr. Eric Singer, yes. Around the time, he was in Lita Ford's band. And then he made a video with Olivia, and then he ended up playing on Black Sabbath for a couple of years, and then he would eventually join Kiss after Eric's passing, and ended up playing with Kiss during the last 15 or so years in their career. But he didn't play on this album, unfortunately. Culture Shock basically has Steve Kipner, Marcus Ryle, Olivia back on vocals, but it doesn't mention anything about who does the guitars, because there's a little bit of there's a tiny guitar solo in the song. Yeah, so that's side one. Now side two is Moth to a Flame, written by Steve Kipner, who also wrote Physical. That has Carlos Vega, Marcus Ryle, Lee Ritenour, Steve Lukather, yes, Steve Lukather again, and John Farrar doing all the extra work. Moth to a Flame, like saying about how moths are attracted to flames. And then years later, Metalhead would write a song, Moth into Flame, in honor of Amy Winehouse. So, pretty good track. Overnight Observation was basically like a song written about a really perverted doctor who serves martini and when he gets frisky with his female patients and all. It's got Carlos Vega, Jeffrey Hales, Tom Snow, Tom Scott, Lee Ritenour, and John Farrar. And then it comes to a duet time, You Were Great, How Was I, with Carl Wilson, rest in peace. Passed away around 1998, about 13 years after this album came out. How I found out that Carl Wilson was on this album was I was visiting his Find a Grave page when I was 18, and some guy was like, "You were so amazing on that Olivia Soul Kiss album." So, it's pretty. I'm not much of a fan of the Beach Boys, and my dad liked the Beach Boys, but it's quite interesting to get a Beach Boy on this album. With Carlos Vega, Lee Ritenour, Marcus Ryle, Tom Snow, Tom Scott, Carl Wilson, and Christopher Cross on background vocals. Yes, the one and only Christopher Cross, whom, funny enough, I actually saw this year in Birmingham on a doubleheader with Toto. Driving Music was written by Steve Kipner and Tommy Emmanuel. Tommy Emmanuel, really great guitarist, string guitarist, was won a Grammy, I believe he has, but he has been nominated. He's a really great session musician, even was at the closing ceremony of the Sydney Olympics. But there's no Tommy Emmanuel playing on this title track. It's basically just Carlos Vega, Lee Ritenour, Marcus Ryle, Mark Napier doing the cast sounds, John Farrar, and Olivia back on vocals. And then to end it off, it's a song, The Right Moment, which is written by late Jerry Rafferty, a famous Scotsman, who he recorded this song about 10, 15 years before this album came out, one of his popular albums. Olivia really did it was a really haunting song to end this album when she reached the high notes of the song, of the ending of it, which is something Jerry Rafferty didn't do on the original recordings, but that's Olivia's spin on it. The Right Moment had Jerry Lubbock on orchestral arrangements, Jerry Vinci, concert master, Jeremy Lubbock on keyboards, an Egyptian musician I've read about is Ara Tokaleti on pan flutes, and then John Farrar did mandolin background vocals. So, ending it up, It was produced by John Farrar, and this was like the last album he worked with Olivia. I think John Farrar might have done some work with Olivia later on, but pretty much it was just John Farrar writing all the music and making, like, well, performing all the instruments on most of Olivia's work, and then he would get like Steve Lukather to do guitar solos. Recorded and mixed by Alan Sines, assisted by Tim Wilson, additional recordings by Rick Pelloni and Larry Brown. Mastered by Bernie Gernman's Mastering, recorded and mixed at Mooney Pond Studio, orchestra recording at Ocean Way Studio. Managed by Roger Davies, the guy who pretty much saved Tina Turner's career. Because around 1980, Tina Turner appeared on Owen J's Hollywood Nights. And this is around the time that Tina Turner was like picking herself up after a domestic violence relationship with Ike. Photography, the front and back was done by Helm Newton, a famous German-Australian photographer, passed away of a heart attack while driving his car in 2004, and is buried in Germany. He was a great photographer. Photography of the inner spread was done by Herb Ritz, who tragically died of AIDS years later. Art direction design by Norman Moore. Special thanks to Jay Coffin, Kimberly Wilson, Susan Wolfe, Lindsay Scott, Rick Peroni, Laurie Moss, Mark Napier, Christopher Cross, and Carl Wilson. Thank you for Tim for the tea, and thank you Pearly for the catering from Olivia. Steve Lukather, courtesy of Columbia Records. Christopher Cross, courtesy of Warner Brothers. Carl Wilson, courtesy of Caprica Records. Lee Ritenour, courtesy of GPR Records. Paulina da Costa, courtesy of Pablo Records. Great Phillinganes, courtesy of Planet Records. So these session musicians, they were already working with other artists and in bands that like signed to different labels. So when they do sessional work on an artist like Olivia Newton-John, the record company is obliged to give thanks for like having these people like Steve Lukather play on this album, even though they're tied to a different record label. So I have a really running gag that I talk about this record. Is that the title track is basically, it's, you know, the lyrics say, "I get down on my knees and beg you, baby," and it's pretty much the woman begging for oral sex. So the night I lost my virginity with a woman called Carol in Castle Hill, I was thinking of Wingers' Can't Get Enough, Queensryche's Gonna Get Close to You, and the title track of Owen J's Soul Kiss. And I had sworn that I would listen to those songs before I have sex. I would think of those songs every time I have sex. And I'll never ever forget, many years ago, I had these songs, a whole bunch of others, in a what I call a smashing playlist, which features, you know, Olivia, Queensryche, Winger, Johnny Clegg, Dream Theater, Stevie Nicks, Peter Gabriel Hart. And I made it into a joke one time. I was telling my buddy Max about this one time, this Hungarian brass. She made me listen to fucking Celine Dion in bed, and it was a huge turn off. So Max asked me who I should listen to when I smash, and so I belted out Winger, Queensryche, Owen J, Dream Theater, Stevie Nicks, Peter Gabriel Hart, and Max was like, "Oh, fuck, I'm hot now, Martin." So I had to incorporate it into this sketch this year I filmed, where I tell my Jewish pal Moshe about my erectile dysfunction issues. And when I tell Moshe about who I listen to when I smash, it gives him a hard on. It's like, "Hey Moshe, you need this, you need this record to get it up in the bed." And then my Moshe buddy will be like, come back, "Thanks buddy, I'm hard as fuck." So anyway, really good cult records. Shame it didn't really become popular. Shame it was like the end of Olivia's career, as basically her career basically just took a dive. Became less popular because everybody was listening to Tiffany, Madonna, Carly, and all this crap. Because those type of artists were basically shedding much skin, but Owen J never ever shed skin. This is the nearest to like full frontal nudity, just like that. But I always say to people, she was good ass, and when she died 3 years ago, my buddy Leslie said to me, "She was one of your favorites, Martin." Anyway, Martin Metalhead, over and out.